Hi everybody, welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. As you may know, I'm an educator, an entrepreneur, and a professor at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. My main goal is to introduce you to pioneers in the field of education, to learn about topics that you may not be aware of, but you may be interested in. Today we have the honor to have with us Dr. Kenn Heydrick. He's an expert on STEM education. He has been in different positions in government, supporting STEM education, university professor, government agencies, and we had the honor to have him with us today to talk a little bit about STEM education and how can we further STEM education in the state and in the nation. Thank you so much for being with us
Oh,
today.
you're welcome. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the
Well, Dr. Heydrick, why don't we start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience, kind of letting them know about your career and how do you get to where you are right now?
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've been in education for about 35 years now, and I really am glad that I became an educator. I've been very blessed with lots of different experiences. And I started out teaching high school science. I taught biology, and I've taught AP courses. I taught chemistry, physical science, but I really enjoyed teaching quite a bit. And because of that, I had some people who mentored me and who encouraged me to go beyond the classroom, trying to have a greater effect on what kind of change can you impact. So because of those people, I pursued my doctorate from the University of Houston. I'm a graduate of Go Cougars.
Yeah, go Cougars.
But I wanted to have more of an influence. That's when I went to the district level. And so I've been a district level coordinator for 15 years. I was first went to Austin to be their coordinator, and then I went to Pflugerville, a suburb. And so I did that for 15 years and really enjoyed it because you can really have an impact on the science program. And then after that, I wanted to have more impact, and so I sought out a job at the state. So I was the director of science at the Texas Education Agency. I had been encouraged to submit my application for it. And again, you got another sphere of influence. And so I was there for 4 years until they riffed all the curriculum directors. So I lost my job like all the other curriculum people. It was very traumatic, but I really enjoyed that because you really got to look at the whole assessment program, the curriculum program at the state level, and like that. And so after that, I went to the university. I was there for five years, overseeing STEM programs, and so I've been able to, very fortunate to be able to do K through 16, impacting the whole gamut of education. And so that's why when I really came here to give the keynote today, one of my messages is that teachers can be advocates.
Correct.
That so often I hear that I'm only in the classroom, or I'm only a classroom teacher, and that is a message that has to change. And I think I'm proof of that. I spent 35 years working from being in the trenches as a teacher, but seeing that as a valuable experience all the way to the district, state, and university level. So
That is fantastic. Now, let me ask you this. You're really passionate about STEM education. So
Yes.
for the audience out there, people who can be watching us everywhere, can you first of all start by defining what is STEM, and then why are you so passionate about that topic?
good question. STEM is a buzzword. The STEM is being used all the time, and I think in the field we're still trying to grapple with what is STEM, what is it not. STEM has now become STEAM in some areas, but STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Primarily, we'd always talked about science and mathematics. Those were the two of the four core disciplines that we would usually talk about. But we've broadened that now to include engineering, that's the E, and also technology, because those two areas are really impacting our global environment that we're living in. And so STEM has been around for, 10, 15 years as this acronym. I think parents in the community are still trying to grapple what is STEM, or we are a STEM school. Well, why are you really a STEM school? And the intent of STEM is really to show an integration of those subjects. And it's not so much, it's a different kind of class, or it's a different kind of subject, but it's trying to link all of those and integrate them all together.
And why are you so passionate about? Why do you have such a inclination for STEM? Because I have seen throughout your career, when I look at your career path, some way or another, you ended up always, kind of falling into STEM education. Why is that? Why you're always chasing that?
Well, one, there's a need. There's a need at the local level, state level, national level for STEM, and that's where the job market is.
Okay.
And some of the data I showed today during the conference keynote was that the jobs are there. There are more jobs in the STEM field. They pay more. It's just a reality. And so trying to get kids into the STEM fields, whether it's science or technology, I mean, that whole, again, that broad category of jobs. So in terms of the economy, but also I just think that our communities are wanting that. They want to be part of where the future is going to be, and the future is STEM.
Well, and one of the things that I want us to talk to you today about is because you have had that experience, that interesting experience in government, so supporting educational programs and coordinating educational programs, especially in the STEM education. So one of the things that I want us to talk about is what are the things, from the government perspective, based on your experience there, and what are the changes you have seen from the government perspective in regards to STEM education? In other words, what are specific steps that you were able to experience during your tenure at the government level, state and nationwide, towards STEM education, that supported STEM education across the board?
Probably the big area is the accountability and the assessments.
Okay.
Making sure, trying to ensure that all students are able to learn and get a valuable education. One of the things when I was at the state level was one of my passions was this gender inequity that we have going on. And girls are, the data supports this, the girls are typically lagging behind the boys in terms of performance, also in terms of taking the different courses, their performance on the ACT test, the SAT test, going into STEM careers. There's always this lag. And so one of my passions has been, what can we do as an educational community to help foster the performance of girls?
Okay.
And there is research on that. Typically they don't want to stand out within a classroom. They don't want to be called on by the teacher. They don't want to show their peers that maybe they're smart. And so there's this reluctance of participating to performing better. And so we need to change some of that culture that we've got in schools.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up on that because that is a fascinating point. You and I know that most of the jobs in any field are never going to surpass the jobs offers in STEM education. At the same time, 80% of the jobs currently are going to males, which is like what you're talking about, those gap inequalities there. And the other concerning point is that only 10% of the student body in America takes AP chemistry in high school. So what are the things that, in your opinion, the government could do to, number one, close those gender gaps, specifically at a district and a campus level, and make sure that a bigger portion of students take classes such as AP chemistry. We know that a lot of those jobs in STEM field are going to be in the chemistry industry, and our minorities and underserved students are missing a lot of opportunities because of that. So what do you think, in your opinion, the government can do to, number one, close those gaps? They're still big in there between males and females, and encourage more students to take classes such as AP chemistry?
That's a very good question. We've talked about that for a long time. Besides the gender inequity, there's also a racial inequity. And so that's also something that we have to address. So I want to make sure I clarify that. But there are things the state can do. One is helping support all schools. It seems that school budgets
Mm-hmm.
are set by the local state board of education, and the more affluent school districts typically have more money that they can put into AP programs, AP training.
Yeah, exactly. So how, yeah, the key point is you're talking about a great point, which is funding. And my research, one of my research is measuring the impact of school funding on student achievement. I presented that research in Harvard University, and um, this is a hot topic in itself because you have detractors and you have people who are pro that theory. Um, Research overwhelmingly shows that if you put more money in the pot, you're gonna have better performance. Now, the key is where do you put the money? But we have seen a lot of budget cuts in the past years from the state and from the federal government in education. While we're investing right now 13, at least in the state of Texas, for example, we're investing $13 billion in testing. And so when you see that discrepancy, we understand that we have to have standards, and the standardized movement have brought some good, but there's what we have seen is there have been more than 30% cuts, and in the testing budget is still increasing. And I think we're forgetting about what we need to do, what the important thing, which is the gaps inequalities,
Right.
the race inequalities, and how do we make sure that those students take AP chemistry, take AP physics, because those are the jobs that are going to be available. So,
Right.
And so, what are your thoughts about that? Because I know you were in government and you were there, and sometimes as educators you feel like you're tight-handed.
Right.
You don't have a lot of choices, and but I want your perspective because you have experienced both
Right.
both worlds. You have been in school districts, you have been in the government, and you may have a bigger perspective than anybody that haven't had that experience.
Well, the other big area is teacher training. We need to be able to support teachers all the way through, and that's where some of these budget dollars can go to help teachers realize that all kids are able to learn this.
Mhm.
That it's just not the more affluent urban districts that have more money to support teachers to go to conferences to learn how to address all learners, LEP students, that all students are given those opportunities. And so making sure your teachers understand the needs that these kids have, kids of poverty. How do you address these kids of poverty to help change their mindset that, yeah, I can go to school, I can be a chemist, I can take the AP class in chemistry. It's those types of challenging curriculum and standards that we need to make all teachers aware of, that they can help foster that, help support that.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you feel that government officials understand these problems, these issues, or do you think that they're more caught up in other venues and more of I would say the political dynamic, and not so much the real struggles, especially in STEM education?
Right.
Because STEM education, well, the way I see it, and that's why I feel when I'm hearing from you that's why you're so passionate, because there's a big need in there, and a lot of jobs are going to be available, and for kids who are underrepresented and economically disadvantaged and minorities, they have a big opportunity to become productive citizens in the society.
Right.
Do you feel that the government officials understand these struggles? I know it's hard to generalize, but
Probably not, because they don't hear from the teachers.
Okay.
And that was the second message I had today at the
Okay.
conference, is that
Okay.
teachers need to be advocates.
Okay.
They have a lot of value to add. And I think we're at this time now that the legislature, the policymakers, they hear from the businesses, because they all have these lobbyists who are making lots of money to lobby for that position. And there are relatively very few advocates for education. Now, I'm from Austin, and there's been this huge push to get teachers to vote in the primary and the election this fall. And so there are really some concentrated efforts to get educators to the polls, because they're the ones who know education. And so instead of lobbyists going to our representatives at the Capitol and advocating for what they think is going to be important, we need to get our educators, our principals, our administrators, our teachers also sharing what they know will work for kids.
Correct. That's fantastic. That's a really good idea.
And teacher, just to add to that,
Yeah.
I mean, teachers are typically, well, I'm just a teacher.
They're timid.
And that's one thing I said.
Too humble sometimes.
Yeah, they're too humble. You know, I can't affect change. Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to pick up the phone, call your state board member, tell them what it's like to have 35 kids in your classroom.
Correct.
You know, and you can't get through the content because there's, you know, too much to teach, or it's been too scripted. There's not enough flexibility in the curriculum to augment it, to enhance what you're doing.
Well, you're exactly right. It's what we saw with the latest tragedy, the latest shooting in Florida. We saw that there were more involvement, and in terms of increasing school security. The other thing that they were talking about that not many people talk about is the number of school counselors in schools. It's not mandated by most of the states. And so if a school want to say we don't need a school counselor, they don't have to. And when you have counselors, the student radio per counselor is so high.
About 500 students.
Yeah, counselors ended up not doing any counseling.
Yeah.
And so the mental health issues, and then when the students get out of the school, that boy, then there's no follow up. So you expect them to go to apply for Medicaid or whatever, go to a doctor, get a recipe, and consume the medicines consistently to not become violent. So it's kind of a nonsense idea. But going back to STEM, what are the challenges that you think that schools are going to be facing within the next years in STEM education? What from the educator's perspective, and from the institutional perspective, what are the challenges that as a nation and as a state or as local schools we're going to be facing within the next years in STEM education?
Yeah. I think part of it is having communities figure out what STEM is for them.
Okay.
And districts trying to figure out what STEM is for them. I've seen some districts that when they look at STEM, they think, oh, well, let's get a big trailer, a STEM trailer, and it'll have a bunch of fun activities in it, and let's move it from school to school and have it at PTO nights, and that's their STEM effort. So, but really trying to work with the teachers, the educators, on what is STEM education. If it is going to be integrated, how do we do that? Is there a common period that teachers are planning together? And so STEM has sort of influenced those core subjects. You know, giving planning time to teachers to integrate the mathematics with the science and vice versa, and bringing as much technology or the design engineering. Design has been getting a lot of play in the last, let's say, 5 years. Besides the science processes, but the engineering processes and how you build something, how you refine it, those types of things. So it doesn't have to be a standalone class or venture, but bringing them all together so everybody's working together. So getting clarity on what STEM is and how we're going to implement it at the campus or district level.
That is fantastic. To close it up, Dr. Heydrick, what do you recommend to those administrators looking at us right now, teachers looking at us right now that are trying to start a STEM program in their school? Creating magnet schools, STEM magnet schools have become really popular in many school districts across the nation because they have seen the result and the impact that STEM subjects are having in traditional subjects like reading and writing. So what do you recommend for those schools who are looking at us right now, those administrators, teachers who say, you know what, we're thinking about transforming our school, charter school or regular school, in a STEM school? What do you recommend? What steps?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the first thing they need to do is figure out what the data is, to look at the student performance, to see if there are gaps with, gender gaps, racial divides, that type of thing, and see where that is occurring and what subjects is occurring. How are they doing performance-wise at the district and state level? And use that as the rationale for what change you want to bring about. The second thing is to go visit other campuses that have implemented successful STEM programs. There are a number of groups out there that support STEM schools, a lot of different programs out there. So go to those successful schools and visit them and see what they're doing to help support the teachers and the students. So I would think do the research with your data, then also make some visits to those successful schools and districts, and then take what you think is going to be best for your own community.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you one more time, Dr.
You're welcome.
for being here with us. Folks out there, remember that we have this video and many others on Antonio Corrales YouTube channel, Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales, and Student Evaluation and Assessment.com. Please help somebody today, and see you next time.
Thank you.